Three, two, one, action.
Well, let me tell you something, brother.
Hey Joe, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, how you doing? Can you hear me?
Yeah, all good, buddy.
Oh, cool. Awesome. Awesome. Appreciate it. Thanks for making this happen.
No, thank you, man, and thank you as just strictly as a wrestling fan, film fan. Thank you for the film, man. It was honestly beautiful, just so powerful, so moving, and just yeah, eye-opening in so many different ways. I really appreciate that, man. It was amazing.
That's cool. Yeah, this is like I've been making movies for a long time, and this one's really cool because I've never had people thank me for a movie before. Usually people are mad at me. So I appreciate that, and yeah, this is cool. Thanks for helping spread the word and yeah, raise awareness.
No, my pleasure.
That's a
And I mean,
sick. Is that a winged eagle belt in the background? Is that
yeah,
a authentic one? That's nice, man. That's sick. That's cool.
I appreciate that. It was a very expensive gift a couple of years ago.
That's
But yeah,
impressive. That's awesome. That's cool. That's legit.
no, I appreciate it. It's that was always my favorite belt. Like Bret Hart, that was always the
Oh yeah,
yeah
heck yeah.
the
Well,
the
where are you?
visual.
Where are you based out of?
I'm actually based like in London actually, so
Oh, that's
I'm
awesome,
I'm
man. I
across the
love
pond.
London.
Have you been often to London?
I just went once for about a week, but fell in love. I loved it. It was so cool. So I hope to be back very soon. So
Yeah, no, it's chaotic, but can be great as well.
yeah,
Which I'm sure, to be fair, a lot of places in the States are like that as well.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, you're like one of the things that caught me off guard, and that's not caught me off guard, but it's something that really struck me when I was watching this. And also because obviously you did Headstrong as well with Rob, which had a similar style. Like you have that observational style of like documentary, where you're just kind of like a fly on the wall and you're following along. We don't see that a lot nowadays. I feel like it's like less and less people dive into that, but it's just so different, and it's a whole different level of connection. Like, is that like a big reason why you want to do that style of a film? Like, especially with docs.
Yeah, I think that that's a great observation. I didn't want it to come across as just a shoot interview, you
Hmm.
know. Are we recording by the way? Are we
Yeah, we're
already?
recording. Sorry, yeah, we just
Oh
dived
my
right in.
goodness, we already jumped. Oh, this is awesome.
Sorry, I apologize. I didn't say that.
No, that's awesome. So yeah, I didn't want it to be like a shoot interview,
Yeah.
where I wanted to give it more value than just, hey, I did a sit down interview with Sabu.
Hmm.
Also, I like documentaries, but my main passion is making like narrative fiction films. So it's kind of coming from a place of I want to make it feel like an actual cinematic movie. So I like being a fly on the wall because I feel like it helps the movie come alive a little bit more. And yeah, like one of my favorite scenes is just Rob and Sabu at Rob's house and they're just hanging out. And if you like take a step back and pretend I'm not there, it's literally you're just like in a 1995 ECW locker room and they're just like, shooting the shit. So that's really cool, and yeah, but it was driven, we've all seen shoot interviews, and I didn't
Yeah.
want people to go in this like I wanted them to get their money's worth, and so it was kind of balance of creative and commerce, I would say.
Yeah. Do you take inspiration from like other films or things you've seen like growing up or
Yeah,
as
definitely.
yeah.
For this particular film, Beyond the Mat was a
Yeah.
big inspiration. Wrestling with Shadows, the Bret Hart documentary,
Hmm.
and then probably also The Wrestler with Mickey Rourke. And I remember I brought up to set, when we made Headstrong, Rob was actually he didn't. There was a stigma about The Wrestler because it was it's I think an amazing film. It's one of my favorites, but
Yeah, agreed.
it's kind of a downer. And so Rob was always thinking that he didn't want to be portrayed like that, as if like, and I knew that that's really good dramatic material to work with. And I remember with Sabu, I brought up to him, I was like, hey, this is kind of remind me of the wrestler, like thinking he would fight against that image. And he was like, oh yeah, like that's good. I want that because he auditioned for that film and he said he talked to producers and gave
Wow.
them stories and they used stories for the movie. So, I think a lot of people have drawn comparisons of this is kind of like the real life The Wrestler. And then like I said, Beyond the Mat and Wrestling with Shadows.
Were you ever worried? Like I actually my in my other realm of life, I'm also doing an MA, a master's in screenwriting,
Oh,
and
cool.
I was talking about this like wrestling like related films with my lecturer, and he part of it he says there's a recurring theme of like tragedy. That's kind of like a prehistoric like a stigma, if you will, with wrestling and or wrestling stories. Did you think of Sabu's story as a tragedy? Or like, I mean, like, there's unfortunate elements of his story, but like, how did you view that? Like, because can you see how some people may go down that line because he didn't quite get the level of success or money like he deserved.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting topic to examine. I was coming from the lens of I've always been a filmmaker since I was a kid and making a not necessarily a tragic, but just an impactful wrestling documentary was always on my bucket list. In the vein of Beyond the Mat, you
Hmm.
could say that Jake Roberts in the Beyond the Mat was tragic because he's like snorting crack. He has like this really tumultuous relationship with his daughter. I just view it more as good story
Yeah.
and also too I wanted to tell Sabu's story because as a wrestling fan growing up, that wasn't always the coolest thing. And I feel like I had to hide being a wrestling fan because people were like, "Oh, it's fake." And so I think I was drawn to Sabu because I knew it would be a movie for wrestling fans to show non-fans that it's not as fake as they think and to challenge that perception of reality. And that's what I'm excited for people to see. I've already had friends text me where they like watched it with their mom and like when their mom sees Sabu and barbed wire, it's like, what is going on right now? You know what I mean? Like, and so it's I guess you could say that it's tragic in some ways, but that's not necessarily a negative or a dark thing. I think it's kind of a beautiful thing in the story. And I think he went a long way in showing and challenging the perception of wrestling being fake. And I knew that was going to come across with him as a character. I didn't anticipate, obviously, unforeseen events of like him passing away and whatnot.
Yeah.
At
Yeah.
the same time, at a meta level, the whole theme of the film is that he didn't get his flowers, and I feel like the film itself is the flowers capturing him getting those flowers. So
Yeah.
it's kind
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
a Inception level of psychology that's happening.
I mean, that was a later thing I was gonna say, but you mentioned it, so I'm gonna go there. It was scary, like almost how prophetic like his words were, like some of the things he said, and then
Yeah,
obviously what we know what happened.
it's still a trippy experience. I look back
Yeah.
and the whole thing from start to finish is like a fever dream because, I was in the thick of my own life for that year and a half while we were together, and I was like editing every single morning and then shooting and then going to my 9 to 5 at the same time. And I
Wow.
did that for like a year and a half straight. And so when I was in the thick of it, like I was in his world. I'm eating, sleeping, editing, shooting Sabu,
Yeah.
And so I would hear different sound bites and things that he was saying. And what I have heard, is that that's been his character for the last 30 years. And he takes, as Rob says, he takes death defying the moniker to heart, where, it's kind of crazy that he lived as long as he did in some respects.
Yeah.
And so, there were things that he said were prophetic, but in the moment, I was just like, oh, that's Sabu being Sabu. Like that's
Yeah.
kind of who he is. And I didn't know that line of, okay, is this more extreme, less extreme? He really is extreme. Now I see that. It wasn't just in the ring, he was extreme outside the ring as well. And so, but yeah, but then once he actually passed, and then as soon as like I watched the film again, it was such a mind-blowing experience because I was like, oh my God, like it was right there the whole time and I didn't even
Yeah.
see it, you know?
Yeah. Because I think he talks about like this early in the film. He talks about like, I just need one more match. and I'm done. I can go like, and then obviously I think it's after the match is you're talking to him in the ring and he's like, he's talking about like dying and like, okay, if I did, I was like, I think he said that he locked himself in the room and he said if I'm gonna go, I'll go, and then like or 3 weeks later, like,
Yeah, I
yeah, it
think
happened.
that's I would even say in some respects that the original idea came about because we wanted to do a documentary Sabu, and he told Rob and I he wanted to do one last match. So right
Mm,
there, that's the perfect story hook. So we knew, okay, this is going to be a film that's following this guy that never did get his flowers, never did get the accolades he should have, as he wants one more match, and his previous matches weren't that good, and so he
mm,
wanted that last redemptive moment. So in some ways, I feel like the match and maybe even the documentary itself were kind of those things he was getting up for in the morning, like
yeah,
and once that was, he seemed maybe content to, be at peace after that.
yeah. No, and I think that was almost like the beautiful side of it. Whereas some of the things before it felt like we said tragedy or like difficult, but yeah, it was like there was a beauty to it, which was really really cool, and like how you captured it and put it together was again that was incredible.
Yeah,
Um,
it was it's still, like I said, I'm still processing it. I am very grateful that like the story kind of fell in our lap the way that it did. And I think that he was a guy that, I think had a really tough life in the very beginning.
mm,
I think he grew up in a pretty wild environment, and, he talks about not only we've seen the extreme physical pain he put his body through, but also extreme emotional pain. And so I think he was living a pretty hardcore life for the last like 30 years. And so I think the beauty of it is while it's really sad, I feel like, and even since it's happened, like a sense of like a peace and like a weight has been lifted off his shoulders in a lot of ways. So
yeah,
that is what makes it beautiful.
yeah, no, and that definitely comes across as well. You mentioned obviously Rob there and like how Sabu told you guys, okay, I want to do one more match, and like that seemed like the genesis of this whole project. So I feels like Rob was a critical part of this happening. Like if like is it fair to say if Rob wasn't involved, this doesn't happen?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the interesting part about the story is that Rob and I, we made Headstrong, and
Mm,
he hired me for that project. And that was much more just to follow him on his stand-up comedy tour and give,
yeah.
a glimpse into his life on the road and use that as like to show his fans, hey, like life is pretty cool when you're Rob Van Dam. I'm much more of a crazy filmmaker type, and so I was looking for something that make it interesting and give it some depth. And it just so happened right before that tour, he got a concussion, which that was the yeah, an impetus for that project then. And,
Yeah.
it took a life of its own. But with Headstrong, like Rob and I, we butted heads like in a positive way, but we like fought frame by frame on that project. And so, you know, I'm proud of it, but it was like selfishly like 50% of my vision. And so I was left unfulfilled with that. So I had been looking for a wrestling movie or a documentary that I could really sink my teeth in and have my full vision. And so Rob and I, since Headstrong, we talked for a few years about different project ideas, and we still do. We do it all the time. And Sabu came up, and we were hesitant because like I didn't know if Sabu would commit, but
Mm,
Rob assembled the meeting, which was instrumental. And I think the biggest thing, which I'm forever thankful, is right before we started, I said, I know this is going to be a big undertaking, and Rob wasn't hiring me. We were, kind of using our we were funding it ourselves to make the film. And so I told him like, hey, can I have creative control over this? Because, that's something really important before I even get started on this, that I really want my vision to come across. And I give him all the respect and props in the world because he gave me that space and he gave me the room to kind of express, what I really wanted to get across on screen. And I was very shocked, to be honest. When I first showed Rob the cut of the film, I thought he was gonna be like, dude, hell no, we're not gonna release this, and like I was shocked. He was like totally on board. His notes are more just like big picture feedback. Hey, as a friend, what's the best movie we can make? But as far as he never said, "Hey, you can't do this" or "You can't do this," which I think in this film world, especially in the documentary sector, where, if you're producing something, usually that person is going to make sure the subject is perfectly polished and clean. And
Yeah.
Rob did not let me, he let me like full force go with what I wanted to do. Which that's amazing, That's why I'm so shocked that the film's actually been released in the way that it has, because I was like, wow, I can't believe it's actually out there.
Yeah, I think that's what took me aback actually, and I think I saw a clip of your interview with Rob where you said it's not a fluff piece, like that's not I don't know if it was Rob or another interview, but you said yeah, it's like it's not a fluff piece, which what I think I kind of thought it might be because Rob's producing, it's his best friend, so I was like I couldn't imagine there was going to be any signs of I guess what negative you could say or things that maybe we wouldn't want to see
hmm
but it's all there. And I think that's what really shocked me when I was watching that. I was like, well, this pulls no punches. This is a unfiltered man of like his a dedication and the highs and lows and or
Yeah.
everything in between. And that's kudos to, I guess, yeah, probably Rob in a lot of ways for him to be like, yeah, go for it.
Well, I think that it's not designed to be exploitive or dark. It just, like you said, the fly in the wall approach is very truth and authenticity oriented. And in
Mm.
some ways, like once Sabu was getting into the project, I think even some of the crazy stuff he was doing, he was kind of working me and performing a little bit. That's the wild. And I've heard that about his personality. Even in the 90s, like he has like crazy Mick Jagger level drug bender stories, but he would push them and heighten them and exaggerate it of like to get his myth going. And so for us from the outside looking in, we're probably shocked going like, I can't believe this guy lives his life like this.
Mm.
And it is real and it is, a testament to who he is. And at the same time, it's also Sabu being Sabu.
Because do you like that? Actually, that does come to mind because there's that one bit where he says he's talking about these two. He has these two pill bottles, and he's like, I take the red one for, like, I can't remember what it was for, but he's like, I take like 15 of those, and I take 15 of the green ones. And but then he was like, oh, I used to take 20 of each, but that was too much. But 15 is almost like what?
Dude, that was the fun part about the screening, and that was one thing too that I realized that while we were filming certain scenes, I mean, I talked to him right after that scene where I'm like, dude, I'm really nervous about you that like you're going to extremes. And he says like, he has like a monologue of that's how he gets by or whatever. But
Mm.
even during the screenings, I realized, and in the moment, like those moments are actually pretty funny.
Yeah.
Like they're so absurd and over the top. And when we had the premiere last week in Vegas, like people were dying laughing. He's like, "Yeah, I used to take 20 and 20. That was too much." Like it's so over the top and crazy. And in some ways, I've compared. We all know Sabu as his in-ring spots of the crazy moonsaults through the table. Like
Mm.
those are the high spots where we pop. I think he was doing that outside the ring, where it's like, well, what's he gonna do now? What's he putting in the shake? And they're like, okay, that's his outside the ring moonsault through the table.
It was funny actually what he said after that. I think in like the little interview portion, and he's like, he almost stops himself like three times. He's like, I trust my gut, and he's about to say something. He's like, I can't say that, and he's about to say something again. He's like, I can't say that either.
Oh,
But
dude,
he's like,
people
I
were
trust my
dying
gut.
laughing. I think that was a cool thing too. I really stuck out about him is far and away the most honest person I've ever met. To the point where, like, when you don't know someone that well, and he's a legend, he's very reclusive, closed off. The first interview, I was like, I don't know what I can ask. What's tone? When you see like a journalistic interview, you don't want to step on toes. We want to get the truth. And immediately I found out, oh, I can ask this guy anything I want. He's gonna say something on it. I think I brought up like Chris Benoit in the second interview because they worked together, and like he just like went off about it, and I was like, oh, he doesn't care about like anything. Like that's his truth. That's who he is. And yeah, in that moment, it's hilarious because like you could make yourself, look good and say, "Oh, I don't do that." But he said exactly what he felt in that moment, and
Mm.
that's whether I don't care who you are, just to get that in front of a camera, I think is incredibly rare.
Yeah, no, 100%. And you mentioned about him being like reserved and closed off, and that's been said, and like you can see that kind of vibe as a fan from the little we see. how long did it take you to like for him to fully trust you, like to win him over? Because that seemed like a bigger that would be a big challenge.
Yeah, and that's something, that I am really proud about. I've been asked about that other interviews. Is he's so closed off. How do you gain his trust? It wasn't like an intentional, I'm pulling strings or playing puppeteer. I think that he from the onset he felt my genuineness and my passion for filmmaking and wrestling. And so I think that initial spark he kind of already knew that he was going to be into the project. But that being said, it took a good, I would say anywhere from 6 to 9 months for him to like really let go. Because even, it took about 3 months for him to even start like responding about filming. I had to really like pull teeth just to be like, hey, do you want to do this? Do we not want to do this? It was hard for me to commit because he wasn't committing. And
Mm.
so for the first 6 months, it was a really tough project. So I'm like one foot in, one foot out. I'm like, man, I'm putting so much energy, and he would just like flake out. And then he would call me, be like, I'm sorry, let's do it. And so that was a long time. But I do remember even the first couple months, he would like kind of joke and be like, you're, being intrusive on my life. I don't want to do this. I'm like, no, dude, you're crushing, you're doing good. I'm building him up. And then I remember a specific shot. It's a drone shot that it goes from the Las Vegas skyrise to his backyard, and I
Oh
showed him
yeah, yeah.
that, and he was like, "That's some Hollywood shit right there." And like immediately he switched, and he was all on board. He was always texting me like, "Let's go film here. Let's go film here." And by the end of the project, like I talked to him after the last match, and I said. I thought there was like one scene to go, and I was scared to tell him because he was like, "No, dude, we got to go to Japan now. We got to do part two. I got to do barbed wire match in Japan." And I was like, "Holy cow, dude, you're all in on this now." So
Oh
it was
God.
quite the evolution.
It's actually visible now that you say it in the film. Like, because I'm guessing that very beginning, when he's in the house and he's just kind of talking, he says a few things. That feels like an early portion, like where maybe he's still reserved, and then by the end, it's free flowing.
Yeah, for sure. And I that's the film organically unfolds in a very real way. And that's where we go back to being a fly on the wall of
Hmm.
I wanted to do interviews for I want this movie for non-wrestling fans. I know that
Yeah.
wrestling fans are really going to appreciate it, but the interviews are mainly just to establish for people that don't know about him or wrestling to get to know him and his story. And then I wanted the film to really come alive when we're actually just following him in his day to day. So
Hmm.
it is very organic of like, yeah, that's exactly where he was at. He was in a heavy grief stage with, his ex-wife Melissa,
Hmm.
and that was all real capturing that. And I was like, well, I don't know what we should do now. And it's like, well, let's talk about this. Let's talk about, and then he started, things, the dominoes started falling from there.
Yeah. Like it did actually, and I don't know if it's because it's the talk of the town at present. But I'm not sure if you saw the original Smashing Machine documentary that the new movie, Rock's new movie, is based off of. But this gave me a similar feeling to that as well, like of this very just so in depth and there's such a strong heart to that film, and it's not just about the occupation that this person has. There's so much more of a
Yeah,
human story of
I've
passion.
been noticing. I've also felt it's interesting that with the Rocks movie, there are some parallels, especially with like seems like some addiction stuff and whatnot, and just the sacrifice of the body and like yeah. So I know that it came from a documentary,
Hmm.
and so yeah, I wanted to text Rob and be like, can you send the Rock the Sabu documentary? I feel like he'll enjoy it.
I think you'll love it. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think you'd really enjoy it. Yeah, no,
So.
and the film goes from like so many different emotions, and I think that's what's so incredible about it. We go from, heartbreak to heartwarming moments, and and one of the things that really stands out is the scene where you mentioned earlier, him and Rob, and really showing that friendship. And it was so sweet. Like it was just so touching to see that. And like I think he has that line like a good friend is like you don't need a reason to call them or speak to them, and like that kind of thing is I think what you're alluding to. It's more than just
Yeah,
wrestling.
yeah, that's a great observation. I loved I wanted to have them present them as like kids in a sandbox. but there's like little kids hanging out at recess. And so
Yeah.
that's why that was like, I remember specific moments with them where, as a fan, growing up as a kid in the 90s, like filming them just riding bikes, I knew in the moment, I was like, this is just so cool.
Yeah.
So it's very, I'm a hardcore wrestling fan and a hardcore film fan, and I knew that it would be a compelling image for wrestling fans to just see them on bikes hanging out. That's just, I don't know, there's something about it that it almost has like that indie flair to it, but as hardcore wrestling fans, we know who they are too. So it's just
Yeah.
a interesting dynamic.
Yeah, it was just so yeah, it was so powerful, but so like yeah, so touching. And what was Rob's reaction to watching that back? Like if I can ask.
I know that, Rob, like I said, Rob gave me the room to really flex my own version of this, which was
Mm.
really cool. We're very open. We talk about like he would have done things maybe a little bit different here or there. But he's pretty emotional. I would say he gets emotional just about every time he watches a movie. Um, and again, that is as tragic and crazy as that is. That's something I'm really proud of because I do too. There's
Yeah,
some
yeah, yeah.
emotions where you get connected to something, and it is tragic in a lot of ways. You can't help but, feel certain ways.
Yeah, for sure. And there was the way you unpicked his like because I know the film was more about like his journey to the final match, but you had a really nice portion of the context and the story that led to him being in his current position, like getting into wrestling, touching on his childhood, and the fact that it took 9 years for, I mean, obviously his uncle, the Sheik, was obviously the guy who brought him in and everything. And it took 9 years for the Sheik to say, I'm proud of you. And like now you can like, and that like, and again, it speaks to the man, like why he's maybe he is so reserved and hard nosed and tough that, his uncle took that long to be like, I'm proud of you. Well done.
It's interesting. I didn't really actually, I grew up in the 90s, so I knew Sabu. I didn't really know the original Sheik that well. And even
Mm.
entering this film, I knew that he trained Rob and he trained Sabu. I didn't really know that much about him, but what it was so interesting as we got into it is they're so similar. Like they even look exactly alike now. And then I realized, oh, Sabu is basically doing his own version of the Sheik. I didn't realize that, and I think he like embodied his spirit in the most deep way that you can as a person, from his physicality to, his character.
Yeah, no, 100%. And in a way, like took it to another level as well, didn't he? Um,
That's the thing too, and that's something that Rob always talks about is we talk about like second generation wrestlers, there's always that pressure to perform, and um Sabu was his own person, though. He's his own entity. He
mm,
didn't, he also found his own lane. Where, like I said, someone like, I would argue most people in our generation probably are way more familiar with Sabu than the Sheik. Whereas,
yeah. Oh yeah, yeah.
older generation would be like, oh, he's doing a different version of this. So, I think that's a sign of that's like the best case scenario for a second generation wrestler.
Yeah.
Create their own lane, not get overshadowed, but still have the powerful lineage.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And it was actually like his commitment was again something you caught so well was because when he talked about when he was like he had that tour of Japan and 15 out of the 16 matches were barbed wire matches. And they were like, yeah, you love to do this, so do more. And he's like, I don't love it, but he just gives his all. But they confused it with him loving it. And that was so
Yeah, again,
crazy.
I'm
Like,
so surprised. That was another line that got a big laugh in the screening, like, because I remember while I'm making, it, I'm like, well, this is nuts. This is not. It's almost like the crazier things get, it's kind of funny in a dark way.
yeah.
It's like you did 15 barbed wire matches.
But it was nuts that how that's how it worked. Like now, then he had a whole career of like this is your thing, but he didn't want it at all. And he's like, just because I'm good at it doesn't mean obviously I like it. But how he got lumped with it is it's pretty nuts actually.
I mean, I think the word you said was commitment. That's the perfect word for it because that's what's inspiring for me. Like it was a really challenging film to make, but when I see
Mm.
the commitment during the last match, especially when he's 61 and he's
Yeah.
committing to the spots as much as he is into the match. Unbelievable. Like at age 37 now, I feel like if I like, had a paper cut, I would be in the same level of pain that he's at, like, and I think that comes from a very, very deep dedication and just unparalleled commitment that as human beings, I think we should strive more to. I mean, he's very extreme, but man, that it's crazy levels of commitment.
Yeah, because I think at the core of this film, for me, that's what it was about. It was like like unfiltered, unadulterated passion, like for the cause. Like, and whether you deem that right or wrong, it was what he was, and like that's what it was.
And that is, I think that goes back to, getting your flowers as an artist, we all see the passion and commitment, and that's kind of the challenge of being ahead of your time, is you
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
get to cash in on the mainstream by like sometimes if you're unique and original, you're spearheading the way, but at what cost,
yeah,
but that's something I admire, and that's a reflection I see in the story. That's what drew me to it is, I've been making movies forever, and I've had my challenges, and I keep committing, but I've had a breakthrough, and he's a legend and an icon that he broke through in his own way and still didn't break through,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So you have to have passion in order to, deal with those potential shortcomings.
yeah. No, no, for sure. And the one thing I also struck me while watching it, we've spoken about the emotional roller coaster of this, right? I was then thinking about you, and I was like, can you even sum up the emotional experience of this whole journey? I was like, because just even before the passing, let alone add that on top of it, I was like, this is so wild. I don't know, I can't even think
Yeah.
about what I would be like in that situation. Because, and there's also the challenge of like, I imagine, I'm sure there's countless moments where you probably wanted to say something, but now I can't because I'm the observer. I'm just filming it. Like that's it was
Yeah, so
just shocking.
I think what happens is I was at a similar point he was when we entered the project. I had my own craziness in my own world. I just crashed and burned at Hollywood. I had to move to Las Vegas and live with my mom. I had to get a 9 to 5 as a blackjack dealer. Like my life was like at a rock bottom stage. And so we met at kind of similar times where we had chips on our shoulder. We wanted to prove something. He wanted to prove he could have an awesome match. I wanted to prove I could make a good movie. And so I remember last April, right before, like my life was a different kind of chaos than his was, through balancing all these things. And almost like the movie sometimes was in the background. I was working on it every day, but like my life was nuts. And I called my friend, I was like, man, I'm really overwhelmed right now. And he's like, I feel like what's happening is that you're subconsciously mirroring the chaos in front of the screen, behind the screen. Those two are pushing each other. So that's the thing is I feel like Sabu's my perfect reflection for who I am in front of the screen, and I'm behind the camera, and it's a completely different prism, but yeah, I think you have to be a little crazy to film with Sabu.
Yeah. It feels like you were doing some sort of method acting in your own way.
Probably, yeah. I mean, and that's the thing is like it's my own, I'm not a physical person, so I'm not jumping through barbed wire the way he does. But, I commit my own extreme ways to my goals and my dreams and my filmmaking aspirations. And sometimes, that leads to a lot of drama. And the best way to organize that chaos is me telling Sabu's story and his chaos,
Yeah.
So it kind of that wasn't intentional, but in some ways, I feel like that kind of pushed it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I mean, speaking of drama, one of the biggest, I guess, the most dramatic elements of post Sabu passing was the kind of the backlash, I guess you could say, with GCW. Should he have wrestled? Should he have not? And you guys like have done like the film has done a wonderful job of saying what's happened. Like I think because people are saying this is what happened, but obviously what do we believe? And then now we see it. And ultimately, I think Lance Storm even said it before this film came out. He was like, Sabu did what he wanted to do. And so he was like, no matter what other people were doing, Sabu was a man who's going to do what he wants to do. So that no one was going to
I
force him to do that.
I have, I would say, the most utmost authority to back up that claim from firsthand experience because I can tell you, I would text him for like, I would bug him for like 3 weeks straight, just being like, "Do you want to film an interview? Are we making a movie?" What are we, and like, I would, butt up against a wall where like, if he doesn't want to do it on that day, he ain't gonna do it,
Yeah.
And you really have to wait. And that was part of the challenge is I'm so passionate in my own right. So like I wish I could have filmed like every day with him, but like that wasn't realistic to his personality. And I had to learn the ebb and flow of okay, it might be 2 in the morning that he'll text me saying, let's do an interview. And I'll have to be like, all right, I guess we're filming tonight. I haven't heard from you in 2 weeks, but sweet, I'll see you over there. And so like, yeah, that's the perfect example to show he's not going to do anything unless he wants to do. And I know
Yeah.
that from filming um and yeah, that I can see why it would be controversial in some ways, the last match, but that's the whole crux of the film. He wanted to do that. And plus, you look at the prophetic statements he was saying. I feel like if anything, he had a 40 chess mindset where he was the one that was kind of pulling strings with
Yeah.
everyone, including me. I feel like he was working me in some ways. And I'm like, look back, I'm like, that's pretty impressive.
Can you describe that day, like that just filming that final match? Because if I just looked at that part of the films on its own, that's chaotic enough what was going on and how Sabu was just seemed everywhere, and obviously then the match is crazy. So like that feels like an
Yeah.
emotional journey in itself, let alone the whole thing.
I would say that weekend itself was probably one of the crazier weekends of my life, just overall, I would say. It was, I think we did a great job of capturing the energy, but outside of the camera, it was still only about 10% in terms of just like his mindset of you could just feel the nervous energy of because he's such a committed person wanting to put on a good performance. And I was very nervous for him, and so like that whole day was just kind of spent building him up. We were like running around town, like, helping him get like his suit, get his stuff. So it was a chaotic ride. But, the way I told Rob was this is what I learned about Sabu is that everything that's happened has been the most Sabu thing ever. Like there was never gonna be a chance that we were gonna get to, the arena 4 hours early and just hang out. Like that's not the Sabu way. The Sabu way is we're gonna go to the very last minute. It's gonna be a spectacle, train wreck, crazy roller coaster to get to that point. And once he gets to that point, he's gonna flip a switch and become Sabu of 1995. Like I saw it firsthand.
Yeah.
So to experience it like that, like yeah, and I was very nervous for him and from a storytelling perspective of him looking good. Like I didn't want it to be like a kind of a cringe, like, oh man, like he's kind of past his prime in the ring. And I thought that was gonna be it. I told him that later. I was like,
Yeah.
I was getting ready to film in slow motion or gimmick it up. So it's like, dude, I don't know how to make this look good. And he blew everyone away with this performance. And I think it was like one of his best matches. And to be there in person with all the build up of not only that weekend, but the last year and a half, for him to deliver, it's, I think, one of the best matches ever. And I don't think that's an exaggeration with the story leading up to it.
Hmm. How was it like for you by that point? Because I imagine you can't help but then now be so emotionally involved and connected to the human being, right? And then that fear of, okay, what's maybe not just that is he going to do well, but it's a barbed wire match. He's 61. He's obviously his health was not the greatest. What was that? And then also you have to worry about filming it and making sure that part is done. Like that's a chaotic thing to
For
balance, man.
sure, it's hard to balance as a filmmaker and with documentaries, I don't know what the right answer is in terms of how you properly interact with your subject, in terms of he's a human being. We became really close friends. Sometimes when you view it from a journalistic lens, are you supposed to be detached? Like one thing is when you mentioned the fly in the wall thing, I didn't want to influence anything,
Mm.
and I kept telling him that. And a lot of our conversations with that I was like, dude, like I don't, you do what you want to do. Like even if you don't want to wrestle a match, like that's fine. I'm not pushing this at all because I don't want to influence the story at all, and not that he would allow himself to be influenced like we established. Um, but yeah, I remember like telling him like you do what you want to do. Like, don't factor me in. You do what's right for you. And he did, and it was emotional, and at the end of the day, though, I'm really happy for him because as I told him, I thought the match was gonna suck, And I was just like, I even talked to Rob. I was like, maybe we can like in the wrestler they don't even show the last match. Maybe we can do something creative and interesting, and then it like fades off
Fade,
into
yeah.
the sunset.
He dives to the barbed wire, he'd fade away.
Yeah, yeah. And then when the match, I remember actually like midway through the match, I was like, I think this is actually way crazier than I thought it was gonna be. Like I thought it was gonna be like a couple eye spots and then send the crowd home happy. And then in the middle, I'm like, oh no, this is a real match that's happening right now. And for that switch to happen in my brain, like that's still hard to process. That was like a
Yeah.
huge twist that I did not anticipate was the match to be unbelievable.
Yeah. No, and I'm glad. I'm so glad he got that. And like, I actually haven't seen the match in its entirety. I've seen like clips and stuff, like, and obviously then more in the doc. So it would be something I'd like to revisit, especially now knowing all of this. I feel like it'd be even greater to watch from start to finish. The aftermath of the match, there's a moment where I think you're talking. I don't know if it's. I'm wondering, is it you? Because there's a bit where he's all. I think he says like I didn't do enough, and then I think someone says you did
Mm-hmm.
too much. Was that you?
No, so that was actually Josh. That was one of the people helping him get ready in the hotel room before. That was
Mm,
like his lawyer, one of his agents. Um, they became really close because Josh is just a really cool guy that looked out for him
mm.
and wasn't looking for anything in return. And so I wasn't actually even in the room filming at that time. That was
Oh,
a
okay, okay.
different camera person. And so it was a super authentic interaction that he captured. And yeah, I watched that too as a outsider. I'm like, oh wow, like he wanted to do more, and Josh is, being really genuine, be like, I think you did too much.
Yeah, and I guess it's another way of just something that perfectly sums him up, isn't it? That it was never enough. I could always do more. There was.
And
Oh, sorry, I cut you off there.
I was gonna say, I don't know, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. That's the Sabu way, I guess.
Yeah, there was an earlier part in the film where I believe he was like he was intoxicated when he was talking to the camera, and then I think he gets a phone from it was his later girlfriend, and then he's
Mhm.
like, "I'm in an interview. I'll call you back," kind of thing. And then he says to the camera, he's like, "Don't use that."
Literally every line you're saying are the ones that got the biggest laughs there. Like I think I laughed the most at that part. I think it's so funny. And I remember like even like you could argue ethically like, hey Joe, you said not to use that and you put it in,
Mm,
but it's so meta and weird and like it's hilarious. And then but like that's also the Sabu. He's like, hey, don't put that. And then a week later he's like, my girlfriend and I are gonna work out. Come film us. I'm like, okay, you do it.
yeah, because that's what caught me. I was like, "Oh, he seemed to be hiding it," and then he's like, oh, "Okay, there you go."
And that's what I like the movie, and that's what I really wanted to do was have those moments. And maybe you can describe your experience of like while watching of like wait a minute, like what's going on? Who's he
Mm.
talking to? And kind of like adding up pieces, and then it starts to, the breadcrumbs. And I wanted to have that jarring effect.
Yeah, it was shocking actually, because he was so obviously heartbroken about Melissa. So part of me was like, I didn't even think he was capable of having another relationship. So, but then when he was hiding it, and first I was like, oh my God, do you have a girlfriend? Like it almost felt wrong. But then I was like, well, no, his wife passed away. The man can move on, kind of thing. So it was
And
just
he
a
did. That was a really hard thing for him to do, and I think that that is a moment of where he doesn't want to. It's almost like he's confessing he doesn't want to, but
mm,
life takes over, you know.
yeah, yeah. No, it would, and that also got me. That part got me thinking. What would the film have been like, or how different would the film have been had Sabu not passed?
So what's interesting is that the week he passed was the week I was trying to film the final sequence. The final scene was, in a weird way, kind of similar in a bizarre way to what it is now, where
Wow.
the original vision for it was we were going to go back to the desert, kind of how we do in the beginning, and he was going to go on top of a mountain and basically have a spiritual send off where he would like say hi to Melissa um and that was it, kind of like a quiet, gentle ending to the film.
Mm,
And in some ways it kind of feels like him that was originally designed to like him walk off into the sunset. And it just so happens that like literally days later he actually did pass away. And so it
mm.
did change, but I feel like the heart and soul of the original ending is actually kind of how it is. And again, the most bizarre, poetic way.
Yeah, no, it's yeah, you still had that spiritual send off, just in a different way with
And I,
like
I wanted it to be like as over dramatic as it sounds, it's kind of a biblical story, like literally he
I imagine that's why
sacrificing
you've got the biblical quote at the beginning.
for sure. But he was a spiritual guy, to start with, but also like kind of a story of sacrifice where he's
Yeah.
literally jumping into like a crown of thorns,
Yeah.
for our entertainment. So, and also too, I'm highly influenced by David Lynch. He's one of my favorite filmmakers.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, I was borrowing some techniques for him too through that.
Yeah, no, it was yeah, I think that the way again, as heartbreaking as the passing was, it just all and then when Rob said that his now he was gonna have I think it was twins, I believe he's having.
Mhm.
And then just one life ends and now a new life was beginning. And again there was this beauty to it and it all felt like in a strange way it all came together how it should have come together.
Literally, someone asked me last week. They're like, "So how did you know that Sabu was gonna pass away?"
Oh wow.
And I was like, I don't know the answer. So like,
Did that ever cross your mind? Like, did it ever like even whether it was subconscious, if like, oh, well, this is dangerous. Like, you're really playing
oh
with your
yeah,
health
I
here.
mean that's what you talked about the when he's taking the pills, like the conversation on the bed where he's like, I trust my judgment. That was me asking him that, basically telling him like, hey man, I'm really worried. Like, are you okay? Like, and he was like, this is his normal. And that was his
Yeah,
normal for 30 years.
yeah,
So like he was also it was both these things of like worried, but also I'm not sure if this guy's a human being with the amount of things that he can do, you
yeah.
know.
It was funny because that thing I talked about with Lance Storm saying he did everything, he did it his way. Lance also I guess joked about that. Yeah, he did everything his way, and that was in the ring, but also extracurricular activity outside of the ring. And it was. And I'm sure Lance obviously saw behind the scenes in ECW and things like that. But he was like, that was Sabu. It's all on his terms.
I mean, it's public knowledge, there's been, yeah, I think there was like some health incident at like a Comic-Con a few years ago. Like,
Yeah,
he's been carried out of rooms on stretchers. Like, the dude was tiptoeing life. And that's why Extreme Championship Wrestling makes so much sense to me. It's not just in the ring, it's like everywhere. That's their
Yeah,
moniker in life. And but that's the way he wanted to do it, you know.
yeah. Do you, as a wrestling fan, can you believe what you've just been able to create and document?
I really can't. No. And as you know, I've been very grateful because I've been making movies for a long, long time.
Mm,
And as an independent filmmaker without a studio, without a machine, when you sell a movie in terms to the public to tell people to go watch it, it's always that insecurity and self-doubt. And like this is like one movie where like I know it's just a good movie. And I could tell
yeah,
people, go watch this. This is a good story. This is something I'm proud of. I might not ever get to do that again. You know
yeah,
what I mean? Like the way that these dots connected, I'm pretty shocked myself. It's pretty incredible. And it's weird and bizarre to express these emotions, but like I'm grateful, you know, which is
yeah,
so weird because the film ends with the passing of a legend who's arguably taken too soon, arguably had a tragic life. But like, um, to tell his story in the way that it happened was absolutely unbelievable. And that's why I encourage everyone to watch the movie, you know, wrestling fan or non-wrestling fan. That's the thing is I know wrestling fans are going to take to it. And a lot of them are watching it now, but I'm like, I can't wait for non-wrestling fans to discover this because I think it's just as compelling and interesting for them.
yeah. No, there's a few wrestling documentaries I can pass on to people that are non-fans, and I think this is one that can be added to that list. Like, if I want to give them like the nitty-gritty of like wrestling, I think this is like a real like this is there's so much to it and so much sacrifice involved. It's a hell of a thing.
Yeah, it's
Um,
a, you know, it's a story of a guy that, and people can relate to what he goes through, even if you have no idea what wrestling is. And that was the
yeah,
goal. I wanted to just transcend like, oh, I don't get wrestling. It's like you don't have to. You just have to understand, you know, human nature. You know.
yeah. Everyone can understand sacrifice and
Mhm.
like passion, and that's what's on display. If I'll just end with a couple of questions, Joe. And again, thank you so much for this. It's been incredible to speak to you. Um, what was perhaps the most shocking moment for you that caught you off guard, or something like you didn't expect while filming this? I mean, I'm sure there was countless, but can you pick a one and not a top one, I guess?
Probably when Sabu started snorting Keurig coffee. That one caught me off guard. Because so before this film, I actually have another feature film that's coming out. It's another documentary next year. It's
Oh,
about
nice.
some artists in LA who are homeless
Hmm.
and they're making their way through Los Angeles in the entertainment business, but you know, they live in the streets. And I was in some really crazy situations during the filming of that film. And I remember when Sabu was like, "Hey, film me doing this." And he poured out Keurig coffee and he snorted it. Like, I remember thinking in my brain, why do I keep getting in these scenarios in my life? What is this saying about me right now? You know?
You know
But
how we
then,
spoke
though, like
about
I said, it's one of those moments where in the moment I was like, this is insanity. But then afterwards, it becomes kind of funny. And it's one of those moments that people talk about the most, where I'll have friends text me like, I can't believe you just snorted coffee. I'm like, I know.
I mean, maybe it was me being silly. I was sat there wondering, I was like, what is he snorting? I was like, what is that? Like, I definitely missed something because I was like, what is that? I was like, that's not like that's not normal drugs. Oh,
And that was one thing that I miss is that he's one of those people that this is incredibly rare where anytime I film with him, he's gonna do something very interesting in front of the screen. I mean, even I remember he would be like, "Let's go to the gym," and I'm like, we've gotten footage. I don't want to keep repeating stuff." And he's like, "Well, afterwards, I'll like eat a protein shake." And I was like, "Oh, cool. You know, we kind of had this Rocky vibe going, his training and stuff, so that'll be fun." So I didn't have any expectations. I just started filming and making a shake and he starts putting eggs, coffee, ice cream, and I'm like, what is going on right now? You know, so like That is an incredible ability. And that's like kind of his performance of the film is he might
Yeah,
not have been consciously aware of what he was doing, but I think he knew like how to get a pop out of people, you know? That was his commitment.
yeah. I guess ever the performer for sure.
Yeah.
And
Commitment.
if I was to then now, like you've done this, and obviously I know how much it's meant to you, and how, and obviously I now know how incredible it is, and a lot of people are finding that out. If we're in dreamland, what's the ultimate wrestling project, feature film, documentary that Joe Clarke could make? Like, there's no limitations. I'm making this.
I'm gonna be thinking about that a lot because I tend to put walls on what's possible. And the tough part is a lot of stories have been told.
Mm,
I would say, well, to be honest, this one's gonna I want to do another wrestling documentary, but I also don't because I feel like this is such an incredible story. It's kind of hard to follow this.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like you can always get better as in developing and growing as, with the craft.
Mm,
But I feel like we set a really high bar with this. I would love, even though it's been done a bunch of times, but I think like Mick Foley doing a story with him would
yeah,
be
yeah.
awesome. But like, I talked to Rob and he's like, he's been featured on stuff and whatnot. But he's just someone that kind of has that similar parallel lifestyle. I think I'm just drawn to these people that commit so much with their bodies that I'm just so interested in who they are as people
Mm.
that that's someone I would love to really dive into. Um, Another maybe
Can I just say, if with Mick though, you said how you keep finding yourself in these strange scenarios. I think the strangest scenario you might find with Mick is that you're surrounded by Christmas stuff. I think that's probably the craziest thing you'll get.
I'm down for that. And that sounds great. I mean, so yeah, we'll see. We're still pushing this one. We've talked about other wrestlers. Rob and I, we always talk about different projects, which is exciting. I really want to make sure though that I'm constantly pushing myself to take the next step. And so but yeah, I think this one it's gonna be really hard to top. I think it's that good.
No, I agree. I agree. And yeah, but I mean, I'll leave it on that, Joe. I mean, I'll
Awesome.
put I know it's obviously it's Kinema, right? Was it Kinema?
Yeah,
That's
it's
the
Kinema, which is cinema with a K,
yeah.
kinema.com. It's just cool new streaming service. It's basically for, cool indie artists that we don't have the machine behind us. And it's a great viewing experience. And I heard the pictures like, really clean and nice. And so
Super
people are
easy.
enjoying
Like,
it.
yeah, yeah, that's where I watched it. I was 4.99. I mean, I didn't even think about the money. I was just
Awesome.
like, great. Like,
I appreciate that, man. That's really
yeah.
cool. I
No,
appreciate this.
no. It was. I mean, it was worth every penny. It was
Awesome.
so good,
Cool.
and yeah, it was so easy to use. The platform was really, really good. Like, really nice,
Great.
really good stuff.
Fantastic. That's awesome to hear.
Yeah, yeah. No, again, yeah. Thank you so much, Joe. I wish you absolutely all the best for this film. It deserves everything and more. And I hope you get that, man. Thank
Awesome.
you,
I
man.
appreciate that. It means a
Uh,
lot. And this was a great interview. Thank you so much.